can shield it a little bit. So when he's here, it's hard to extend because it's still kind of close and it's at an angle that's hard to drag. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the foot.
Hey, so as you saw in that previous video, I have now, well not now, but I tested positive for the Big C. According to this anyway. So fortunately, I've only experienced a couple days in which where I felt pretty rough, and therefore have been able to continue my movement practice. And seeing as I'm spending the next few days in ISO, and again the fact that I'm feeling up to the task, I thought it would be a good idea to use this time to make a video following on from some of the information that I made in the previous one, where I was talking about flexible dieting and the different levels of tracking. And so yeah, the clips, well, the footage following this video right now will be just some training footage of me, myself and I in my backyard, and then some educational material around just a random topic that I thought might be of interest. So if you stick around, you'll find out what the secret sauce is. So if you stick around, you'll find out what the secret sauce is. Stay tuned. So this type of talking is way different than doing like an oral presentation for uni. It's way more awkward. But nonetheless, so what is the best diet for you? I think before getting into that, I think it's important to shed some light on two terms: dieting and restraint. And this is because these two terms are intimately linked or closely associated when you look in the literature. So I think any individual which that is looking to embark on a new fitness journey should be aware of certain things, and something that I was definitely not aware of in the past, which is the potential link between monitoring things like physical activity and dietary habits, such as macronutrient tracking, and that role or the influence those type of behaviors can have on developing unwanted behavioral outcomes, such as disordered eating. For those who are unaware, some characteristics of disordered eating can include things like eating in response to emotional cues, being unable to regulate appetite and fullness cues, and potentially over-restricting oneself beyond what is healthful. Just to be clear from the very beginning, there is very little chance an individual is going to be successful with their dietary-related behaviors unless they are able to exert some level of restraint or control. An individual who is unable to exert some form of restraint in respect to their dietary protocols will not be able to adhere to any dietary regime, irrespective of the way that diet is constructed. Now, dietary restraint is a concept way beyond the scope of this video, but just so we're aware, it involves an individual exerting some cognitive effort to restrain their intake. Importantly, however, this does not necessarily always pertain to how much the individual is eating or the amount of energy they're consuming. And this was extracted nicely from a paper, as someone can endorse high dietary restraint via high cognitive efforts to restrict without restricting energy intake. Secondly, although it's been associated with the development of eating pathologies, it does not mean it's causal in the development of such behaviors. In fact, the practice of dietary restraint can be a useful strategy for those looking to lose weight and maintain good long-term outcomes. And it is less likely for eating pathologies to develop when the practice of dietary restraint is being monitored or as part of a well-validated weight loss program. Okay, so what's this got to do with the best diet for you? Well, I spoke on my previous video that there are different tiers or levels to tracking your nutritional intake, and the goals and the current health status of an individual will likely dictate where that individual operates on, and subsequently will allow for or require more consistency, flexibility, and accuracy. Conventional thinking wouldn't have considered such factors and only viewed the individual in two camps, either being on a diet or off a diet. Thankfully, literature is recognized the importance of individualization when approaching a dietary regime. Rigid and less flexible dietary restraint practices are associated with higher preoccupying cognitions, essentially meaning that an individual will have a higher attentional bias towards food and potentially be more preoccupied with their body image. Fortunately, more flexible dietary restraint practices may predict better long-term outcomes. Okay, so what's this got to all do with what is the best diet for you? Well, the secret sauce is that the best diet for you is the one in which that you can see yourself adhering to the most. I'm not sure if that came as a surprise to you. Just to peel the layer just a little bit more, although it is by no means the only factor influencing weight loss, manipulation of one's macronutrient ratios is an important way of facilitating body composition and weight loss outcomes. The literature commonly compares the implementation of low carb and low fat protocols, in which where there seems to be quite an agreement that both are equally as effective in producing results. So just bear in mind that I am aware that protein is an essential macronutrient when it comes to body composition and weight loss, but I'm speaking in respect to when the protein is being adequately consumed or matched if it is part of a study. Secondly, other things like macronutrient distribution, meaning how your nutrients are spread throughout the day, is also another important factor, however may be something that can be discussed in another segment. And lastly, we're speaking within the framework of weight loss, not necessarily which dietary protocol may lead to the retention of lean muscle mass and then potentiate better body composition outcomes. So to really illustrate my point about the secret sauce being sustainability, there was a diet in which that compared a bread inclusive group, meaning they can have bread in their diet, versus a bread exclusive group, meaning they can't have bread in their diet. And it appeared that the group in which that were allowed to consume bread ultimately had better adherence to the diet and actually fewer dropouts. But to conclude, the bread inclusion in a low-calorie diet designed for weight loss favored a better evolution of dietetic parameters and greater compliance with the diet with fewer dropouts. So to continue, a more recent study compared a rigid group in which where the meal plan was given to them versus or at least compared to a flexible group in which where they were given macronutrient targets to hit, but they were able to fill those numbers up with whatever foods they desired. So now firstly, weight loss results were similar amongst the both groups, but more importantly, subjective feelings of hunger were similar. Disinhibition, meaning the amount of times binge eating episodes occurred, was similar, and the level of cognitive restraint was similar. Essentially telling us that it is important to understand the subjective feelings and perspectives of eating, and therefore ultimately helping us determine what diet is best for the individual. Commonalities amongst individuals who also have good outcomes also exhibit positive changes in their relationship with food. Many individuals grow up with complex relationships with food, such as eating food for comfort, engaging in compensatory behaviors, and disinhibited eating, like binge eating again. Aside from educating the individual about macronutrients and their health, it's important to address things like psychological, sociocultural, interoceptive, and emotional barriers, as they also need careful and individualized intervention. Yeah, if you like the content or want to learn anything else, drop a comment in the comment section, and thank you.